Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Knowledge League. Today we will be talking about, well, it's a good thing I always keep a chess piece in my pocket, because today we're going to be talking about the not-so-humble origins of chess. We've all felt the dilemma of making choices, and those choices can dictate the rest of our lives. They can lead us toward triumph or failure. And it's all about making the right choices when looking through all the options that are ahead of us. There's no better way to do this than strategic gaming. And one of the classics is the old game of chess, where every move really matters. Check and mate. The literal translation is "the king fell." Now, these are probably some of the most famous words in all of gaming. And it doesn't just stop at gaming. It's moved on to the common vernacular. Whenever there's a strategic decision, the victor always says, check and mate. You can be sure of that. Go watch a movie. I mean, even the kids are doing it nowadays. And it's all thanks to a very ancient game. In Spain, it's called ajedrez. In France, I have no idea how to say it. German, it's Schach, and in Russian, it's Schachmati. But the true origins of chess date back 1,500 years, going back to India, where it was known as Chaturanga. So unlike today's chess, Chaturanga was a multiple player game. There were up to 4 players. And there was also an element of chance where people would roll the dice, which to me sounds like a far cry from what chess is today and more like a game of Friday Night Dungeons and Dragons, where instead of pawns there were goblins and I was a level 10 dwarf barbarian. But aside from that, it was still a riveting game. A single player rolled the dice, and depending on the outcome of that roll, they would then get to choose whether or not to play or not. It was through this element of chance that really separated what chess is now from what it was back then. Like many things that have reached us from antiquity, the game of chess has some legends and some fables that go along with it. Namely, it was started by the Raja, who was this very young king in India during the Gupta dynasty, known as the Golden Age of India. This is a time period where intellectuals flourished, where a lot of emphasis was put on academics, architecture, arts, and history. This is also when Chaturanga came about. Now, it's believed that the Raja was not very good at war, and he lost quite a few battles. His advisors, which he didn't listen to very often, but every once in a while he did, said that, Raja, would you please take a break, and instead of actually going to war, maybe we could simulate it somehow, maybe through a game. The word got out. And finally, an inventor came over and introduced the Raja to Chaturanga. This was a chance for him to live out his warlike tendencies and strategize on the game board rather than out in the field. The benefit of which is, of course, he gets a great mental exercise, and best of all, no one has to die. The fact that before the beginning of the battle, both sides had equal forces was especially appealing. Unlike real war, where it always seems like one side has an advantage, it wasn't like that in Chaturanga. Each player had the same number of pieces. Pieces which today have been replaced by kings and queens and bishops. Back then was the Raja and the elephant, and many others. Therefore, the one who seemed more insightful, more patient and strategic, was able to take the victory. In other words, flexible thinking could lead to a victory in an ordeal where both parties have equal powers. That's what made Chaturanga so appealing at the time. The Raja was fascinated by Chaturanga. Eager to thank the inventor of the game, he asked what he could give the man as a reward. The man answered, I do not need gold or jewels. I will take grain. Let your people put on each cell of the playing board the number of grains, equal to the square of the number on the previous one. That is, 1 on the first cell, and consequently 2, 4, 16, and so on. The Raja found the idea amusing and easy to fulfill, and so they shook hands, and preparations were made. When it was time to pay the inventor, it turned out that all the grain on the entire known planet wouldn't be enough for the Sages Award. Here is some great math problem which only can be seen to be believed. It is something like 264 minus 1 equals 18,400. By the way, this number is larger than the number of grains of sand in the Sahara Desert. Just saying. Thus, the legend behind chess highlights the importance of thinking many moves ahead, making wise decisions, and ultimately, about catching one's opponent off their guard. From India, where the Chaturanga became very popular, it traveled to Persia, where it was known as the Shatranj. After the conquest of Persia by the Arabs in the 7th century, the game of Shatranj became very popular in the Caliphate. And it was here that religious problems became imminent. Watch this video to know the outcome of the church's struggle with chess. In Chaturanga, the course of the game was essentially determined by how the bones would fall. That is, by chance. It was during this time that many changes went about the game. Ultimately, the dice were removed, and this was to remove the element of chance, which was seen as being very negative. It introduced gambling into the game. Rather now, it was just a turn-based game, which made a lot more strategic sense. Chess caught on not only among Arabs, but thanks to trade routes, it settled in China, Japan, and other neighboring countries of the Far East. The game's way to Europe was also opened thanks to the Arabs, since intermittently the Iberian Peninsula and Sicily used to fall under Arab rule. It is believed that Europe had a special approach to chess. It was perceived not just as a game, but as some sort of a peculiar experience, teaching all but the fine art of state administration and human relations, if not techniques of manipulation. It was in this way that chess started to really develop in the European world. Accordingly, some key pieces also changed their name and were given new rights. The sage became the bishop. By the way, it's during this time that the queen became much more powerful. As she replaced the Fairs, who can only go one move, the queen now had unlimited reign over the board. It's interesting to note that in Europe, they had the same reservations as they did in the Muslim world, because of the element of chance or hazard. Even the Templars, who are commonly believed to be far from prejudices, were also among the prohibitors. Bernard of Clairvaux introduced a ban on the game of chess in the Charter of the Knights Templar. The Bishop of Paris Odo of Sully went to even further extremes, prohibiting the clergy to, quote, touch the chess set and have it at home, end quote. On the other hand, the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order, Werner von Orslin, revoked the ban on chess, considering it an appropriate occupation for a knight, alongside crusading and protecting Christians of the Middle Ages, of course. Despite the opposition of the church and some European kings, the game of chess conquered Europe. And by the 18th century, it was being played in all the cafes in London and in Paris. As for the system of international competitions, this came about during the 19th century, where there were champions of different regions, cities, and states that would compete against each other, whereas international competitions were being held during the second half of the century. A landmark event took place in 1886, whereas these two guys competed, and the winner gets to be world champion. From then on, it was an annual event, and millions flock over to see who's going to be the next chess master. From that point on, the Chronicle of Chess was written in history, and it all started with a single grain of rice on a single square. Thank you guys very much for watching our video on chess. I hope you learned something. I sure did, and I also learned that I don't know how to pronounce European names. Other than that, I hope you liked it. If you did, please give us a big thumbs up. And one question before we leave. What is chess? Is it a game? Is it a sport? Is it an art? Or is it a combination of all three? Write it down in the comment section and we'll get back to you guys next time. Until then, this is the Knowledge League saying goodbye.
If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.